This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fanslow, and Nintendo. A maze of rubber wiring and electronic intelligence so advanced it was deemed not a video game, but an 8-bit entertainment system. That and more after a word from our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training. Let NAPA Autotech's Build-A-Tech program, like Build-A-Bear, help you turn your general technician into a moneymaker for your shop. Make them a profitable member of your team. Go to napaAutotech.com for more details. It's pretty insane that pretty much a year ago to the day, and I guess I'm recording this just before Christmas Eve, quite literally a year ago from today, my family and I were all sitting wondering if we weren't going to have a Christmas with my dad anymore, or ever again. That our last Christmas with him was a year before that. And you can listen to that whole story called the 4 a.m. phone call, which was episode 115. And that'll get you all up to speed about that. But kind of thinking about that stuff a little bit, and then my wife and I go to, I guess, a therapist together, and not marriage therapy is in the common sense, but we have a son together that struggles with ADHD and a little bit of, they would call it IED, which would be intermittent explosive disorder. In a nutshell, he struggles with regulation, emotional regulation, and he's been getting much, much better. I don't say that just to race to his defense, but it's the truth. You just can't use the parental techniques that worked on the other kids with him. So we elected to see somebody together to try to, mainly so that we're on the same page, and then also just really trying to set this kid up for success down the road, because what's the alternative? I mean, normally they'd get him pumped full of drugs, and I'm not saying medication hasn't been part of the answer, but a lot of it is counseling and therapy, not just for him, but for us, just to learn how, I guess I want to say how to handle stuff, but break old habits. And honestly, freaking running theme of the podcast for quite a few episodes is social constructs. These ideas of conformity. There's a reason I bring all this up. I think I can tie this all together. And what really got the juices flowing on this idea, and what I'm going to talk about, is meeting with a therapist who's a bit older than I am. Does not matter how much, but short of, he grew up in a very, very abusive household. I didn't. We grew up under a lot of the same circumstances. And the reason that's important is in everyone kind of getting to know one another, this therapist and my wife and I, start telling them about growing up. So I get to thinking about my dad and the close call with him, along with trying to raise our youngest son and modern times. So I'm going to start out telling you some stories. I hope you get a kick out of them. But I also hope it illustrates some hurdles we all are going to be running into, or have been running into, with a lot of the younger talent coming into our profession. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for quite a few years, but the way it was kind of brought up to me, or I guess when he said it, it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I'm going to be talking about validation and positive reinforcement and all that, and how it was so much different when I was growing up. Not just the household itself, not just my parents, but my environment. So, and some of these stories maybe you've heard from time to time, but I grew up on a farm. I also grew up where my grandparents owned a farm implement dealership. one thing I remember vividly from my perspective was I wanted to be doing what my parents were doing. Meaning, if my mom was out mowing the yard with our, at the time, a Massey Ferguson 6 horsepower, probably 26-inch mower, I wanted to be out there doing that. And any chance I could get to ride along and steer, I took. That just keeps going on and on. So we're out cutting wood. I wanted to be the one cutting the wood. I didn't want to be hauling off brush. If we were out in the field, I wanted to be driving the tractor. If I was up at the implement with my grandparents or even any of the guys in the back, if they're running the forklift, I wanted to be running the forklift. And I'm not talking about like elbowing people out of the way. It's just watching intently so that, God forbid, something would happen. Who could jump into the seat and take over but Matt, even when he's 6, 7 years old. My first real chance of driving stuff like that was, of course, at home. I mean, I was probably in 2nd grade, so I'm 7 years old at best. The rider mower at home was the first thing, and it's first mom will outline, and then you can do the rest while she watches like a hawk. But after a while, you gain trust, and then you got to just, she'd do the outline, and then you'd go mow while she went inside and did something else, or worked in the garden, or found something else to do. And that's really how it started. And then get a little older, 3rd grade, 8 years old, I'm up at the implement, and my grandpa looks at me and he's like, hey, do you think you could go get these, at the time there were 3-point blades that went on the back of tractors, connected through the 3-point hitch. And these were probably like 6-foot, 7-foot blades. They weren't that big for like dirt work or blading your driveway. These sat on pallets. So he's wondering if I can hop on the forklift and go get these. I think he's fully expecting me to either back down or fail epically. And mind you, I suppose you could try to go look up Massey Ferguson, probably like yard. What they call them, yarder forklifts, where it's basically a backwards tractor. The drive wheels stand 5 feet high. It's hydrostatic, so driven by the foot pedals, and I can't sit on the seat and touch the pedals. So I would wedge myself up against the seat, so my back would be up against the seat, and I could stand on the pedal to go forward or backwards. And of course, you run the tines with the hand controls. I would never imply that this is a smooth operation, but I did it. And the reward was I got to do more. So that even at the age of 8, we'd get the flatbed trucks in, semis loaded with, I mean, you name it, all sorts of equipment. And not all of the equipment do you unload with a forklift, but much of it you did, including rotary mowers, cut conditioners, hay binds, a lot of pull behind equipment. And the trucks, or I should say the trailers, weren't equipped to be tilted in any way to be able to just back these things off. They had to be lifted off with a forklift. And 8 years old, my grandpa has me doing this. In retrospect, I don't know what he was thinking. I have no idea in retrospect, but that was the reinforcement. That was the attaboy. That was the validation. NAPA Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in NAPA Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, The Autotech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. Autotech's EV Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with NAPA Autotech training. We heated the house with wood, and we'd have to go through a fair bit. On a really cold winter, we might burn through about 20 cords, which is, if I remember right, 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet is one cord of wood, tightly stacked. So it's a fair bit. Usually my dad fell the trees or dropped the trees, cut the trees down. And when I was really young, I did not get to touch the chainsaws, but I got to carry off the brush, throw the brush back into the woods, or we have a pile and burn it, something like that. And got a little older, could run a chainsaw, but I would be cutting the tree as it was dropped and not even limbed as much. He'd go through and do the limbing because it is dangerous to get something called spring poles where branches are trapped underneath the weight of the tree, and if you cut it wrong, you can get smacked pretty darn good, if not hospital level. And then quite honestly, you could get killed, but usually you get smacked really good and break something, or you pay for it. I was probably, really no exaggeration, I'm probably around 11, 12. I just turned to my dad like, hey, I want to be dropping the trees. He kind of looks at me like, really? But he's like, fine. See that tree over there? Drop it. And to set the stage up a little bit, in the field where I would have to drop this tree, we have parked our tractor with a manure spreader that didn't have the tines in the back. But we threw wood in the back of that, and then we had an old Bronco with essentially it was another manure spreader that it pulled. These things would all be loaded up with wood, and they just so happened to be parked parallel to each other with a area gap. And he just said, fine, go drop that tree. Don't you dare hit the tractor or the wagons or the truck. I think he's expecting me to back down. And I implore you, I did not grab the chainsaw and walk up to that tree, I feel arrogantly. It was really matter-of-factly, like I just knew I could do it. I knew how to notch. I knew how to really aim where this thing was going to drop. And I'm sure he's watching intently to make sure that I did notch it properly and that it was aimed properly. And it wasn't a small tree. Like, I'm not talking like a foot in diameter. Like, this thing was, it wasn't 3 feet, but in diameter, probably 2.5. I did it with a 20-inch bar, and I had to cut from both sides. But I notched it out, did the back cut, and it dropped right smack dab in the middle. The reward was I got to keep doing it. I got to keep dropping trees. Took over the felling of the trees. And this is something that happened over and over in my life. Around that same age, probably a little younger, 10, up at the implement, my dad got up there after he was done on the mail route. And I walked up to him and I said, I want to start fixing chainsaws. And he chuckles and I know I've told this story before, but he went up to the machine shed, came back with 2 Johns Reed 621s, if you want to go look up what they were. And he said, make one good one. And I'm not saying he just left me out to hang, but I had to do all the work. He helped me make sure that I picked the right jug and cylinder that had looked good and helped me with some of the parts. He had to put the new rings on the piston because my fingers weren't strong enough yet. And also, I didn't have calluses built up. Long story short, I got it together. He went out to start it. Wouldn't start. He knew exactly what I did wrong. I know I've told this story. The carburetors have diaphragms in them, and there is kind of a lever to the needle and seat that has to connect to the diaphragm, and I didn't do that. So he showed me where I went wrong, but it wasn't critical. A lot of stuff when I was being shown stuff was critical. This wasn't one of them. So he's sympathetic with this mistake. Got it up and running, and my grandpa put a for sale sign on it. They also sold used saws, and I think it was for like $125. And a couple weeks later, I got off the school bus because the school bus would drop me off there, and my grandpa handed me a wad of cash that the chainsaw had sold. You would think the reward was the money. It wasn't. I took the money and I spent it all on model tractors and that my grandpa sold. So really, he just gave himself some of that money. The reward was, from then on, I got to work on chainsaws. I got to fix chainsaws. And this is just a pattern over and over growing up. The reward was trust, validation, belief. If somebody said something really good about me, mainly my parents, if my parents said something really good about me, it was like, Matt could do that. My aunt wanted to do some landscaping around her house. She and her husband owned a well drilling company, and they had a skid loader. And my mom and dad very matter-of-factly told her, Matt can come up and run that skid loader. So that was the reward over and over and over. And then I tell these all stories, one, to reminisce a little bit about my dad and grandparents. Also, I say this a little bit more of a window into my world, but also how the world's different now. What are the opportunities for kids now to have that sort of upbringing? Not even on a farm, but just where there's tasks that they can do and help with. And a lot of the reward is to be able to do more of it, to be able to gain trust. If I look around my neighborhood, it's if they get to mowing takes a lot of the people around here, it takes them 15 minutes, 20 minutes with a push mower. And I'm not saying that's nothing, but where do you build up that sort of competency? Where do you build up the confidence and the ability for the parents or whoever to just say, all right, good job. Now you get to do this. It's hard to escape movie references, but it just kind of popped in my head right now. You got the Karate Kid, right? You learned how to do this. Wax on, wax off. Now you get to learn to paint the fence, and on and on and on. Learn to sand the deck. Learn to paint the house. Just, you feel like you're gaining. And it isn't, I did not get, and I don't mean this complaining, I'm not, but I didn't get a lot of attaboys. I didn't get a lot of, wow, great job. Oh my gosh. You did that? Wow. I got none of that. Zero. And I'm not complaining. That was just not that world, and I didn't need it. But this is where I'm heading with this. If you grow up where that can't exist, and that's a lot of the young people, and now, honestly, considering time, late 20s, early 30s, maybe even older, they didn't grow up with any of that. And I don't mean, wow, that was amazing. You did that. Good job. I'm not talking about that. They didn't get to grow up with the reinforcement of, or the reward of, oh, okay, well, now you can do this. You've proven that you can drive this tractor. So now you get these responsibilities, this belief. You've shown that you can run the chainsaw. You've shown that you can run this wood splitter in whatever piece of equipment. It wouldn't have to be strictly on my world. What if you grew up around, a general contractor or somebody that works in concrete, and you get to run whatever machines, from the power trawl, the skid loader, probably stuff like that. Maybe even a backhoe. How many kids get that? It's so few. And because of that, the only way for them to get that validation is kind of what many of us would consider slightly overboard positive reinforcement. That you have to really call out their victories. I guess, I don't mean this condescendingly, but make a big deal out of it. Like, and it might be passing a board on a video game. Our kids are starting to play guitar. So when they nail a riff, to really make sure they know that you think they did a really good job, that was really good, that was amazing. And for me, it feels awkward as hell. It really does. It is awkward. Like, well, that's what you've been trying to do. You've been working at it long enough. It's about time. But no, because there's no other reward like what many of us got that grew up in shop environments or farm environments, especially older farms where the machinery really didn't do all the work. And I'm not saying that I just slaved away, but I had to be attentive. I mean, nowadays, I don't know if any of you have run a modern combine, but dude, you can read a book, watch TV. It's not exaggerating. Planting, the planter decides when it's going to be planting, and it gives you almost a map to minimize. Well, okay, because they can shut off certain parts of the planter, there's really no overlap. But it also maps out how to plant to minimize that. And also, it will start seeding areas more heavily based on the yield when you ran over it with whatever harvester, usually combine, kept track. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So the whole point of all this was we have to consider in the shop with the younger crops. And like I said, that younger crop, man, they might be in that 30s now even. The whole not saying anything, no good job, just like, all right, now you can do this. All right, now you can do that. And almost assuming, or I think the best part, or the best description is assuming that the success should be imminent. Like, show some competency. All right, great. You did it. You should be able to do that. And that's just not the way it's going to work. To help build up confidence, we're going to have to become better cheerleaders. And that's almost what it feels like. And if you're like me, it is awkward. It's awkward. But I can also tell you, in my limited experience right now, it works. It freaking works. It means a lot to them. And that's probably the most important part. And because of that, you can see the results. And so therefore, my pitch, my advice is to work on becoming better cheerleaders and becoming more comfortable with what will feel like slightly over the top positive reinforcement. Because at least from, again, limited experience, worth it. So, happy and safe holiday. And like I said, a year ago, I might not have had a dad for Christmas. I do. It's mind-blowing. And I just hope that doesn't take over and weigh me down during the holidays, but also I hope I appreciate it that much more. And not just him, but everybody. And I hope everybody listening can take a moment or two and just look around and soak it all in. And also, I hope the people you're with do the same for you. And so with that, I'll leave you. Thank you to our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training, and thank you to the Aftermarket Radio Network. And until next time, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fanslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fanslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.